Welcome to the Fearless Happiness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Nijst invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happiness Podcast, and this is Max Nijst.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast, coming back to you again with another amazing and special guest, Dr. Amy. But what I like to do, Dr. Amy, is have you introduce yourself to my audience, like who you are, what it is you do, and then you and I are going to rock and roll, as I like to say.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Max. Thanks for inviting me on. I love the topic of this podcast. I do feel like that. I wouldn't say that I'm a perfectly fearless person, but how I got here today has so much to do with courageousness. So I'm excited to share about that. My professional background is I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine, but I've been working in that practice for 23 years. But what it is that I've actually done is found the way in my studies of the last 32 years to merge neurosciences with spirituality. Basically, proof of miracles and changing people's brains in ways that are measurable via EEG, changing their lives and changing their businesses in ways that are very measurable and palpable, and really just focused on creating miracles and being of deep service to folks in every way that I can.
Right. I love that, like spirituality and neuroscience, right? And I mean, I believe, and I'm sure you do too, is that the brain is a very like I've heard, a very powerful supercomputer, right? And if we learned how to use more of it, like we could, like I had a guest where they help the brain heal the body and vice
That's
versa,
right.
right? And because and I had this interesting conversation with them, and I was like, because I hate going to the doctor, because I know every time I have like a sore shoulder or something, he's all, here's a pill, right? Like I am moving away as far as I can from that, right? And using, what you're talking about, like Eastern medicine, or like using my brain more to heal the areas of my body that have trapped whatever trauma, right, in my body. So let's go back and talk about some of those things that have happened to you, and those things that have, like I like to say, the challenges who have shaped who you are today, and that has brought you to where you're at today.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. I mean, talking about body health and body situations, let's call them, I don't, diseases or problems. I was sick the first time when I was 2 weeks old, and I didn't really know what it was like to be well, until I was probably in my mid 20s. And so a lot of trauma of just not feeling good ever, not knowing the path through. My family didn't know any better, and they took me to, you know, kind of normal care here in the United States, which just made all the cycles worse. So many antibiotics, so many infections, so many issues. And, I also had just a lot of tough circumstances, also, a lot of trauma, a lot of unsafety feelings, a lot of instability growing up.
Mhm.
Um, and so by the time I was 18 years old, I was an atheist studying neurosciences at the University of California. And, really thought that if we understood neurotransmitters, we could understand what reality was. And then something that massively shaped my life was my very first time at acupuncture. I had a massive spiritual awakening experience, which is really unexpected as an atheist.
Right.
So
Right.
something that I want to just weave through this is like I really am fundamentally grounded in the practical. I expect results in my own life, and I expect results for my clients or my patients. And so I was, quite pragmatically studying the brain. And basically what I did at that point, and this again is 32 years ago, is I started to weave in a deep understanding that we know that we don't know, which is, I think, one of the things that science has forgotten. There's a lot of arrogance. And I learned that firsthand from the doctors that absolutely did not see me as a human, discounted and disregarded me, and treated my body as if it's just something to do things to, rather than something to honor, something to help heal. So those were very shaping experiences in my childhood. And basically, at a young age, as a teenager, even definitely, I was exploring what is it to be human? What is the nature of consciousness? What does it mean to be alive? And when I shifted from being an atheist to having that spiritual, I call it my big bang, that forever changed the course of my life. And still having this reverence for science, but not praying to it as a false god, right? Don't pray to
Right.
science, as a false god, because science is being run by people. And one of the things that I learned as I was preparing to be a researching scientist in the areas of cognitive sciences, which is how the brain influences behavior, is how well we can manipulate data. We can make it look like what we need it to look like.
Mm.
Right? You just run it through a different filter and look, oh, now it looks statistically significant, or, just the filter of our human perception. So me really understanding how science and how research are really done. And I don't mean it that anybody is being, that nobody's playing out of bounds. Like those are all inbound scientific methods and ways of working with data. So, but just realizing that the human frame as it looks at science is in it's going to be flawed, because the human experience and the human lens are going to be proven wrong. We didn't used to believe in gravity. We didn't used to believe in neuroplasticity, right?
Right.
These were things that were not okay to talk about. Like you could be screamed at and kicked out of your station in society for talking about neuroplasticity up until the 90s, late 90s maybe, or maybe even later than that, depending on who you are. And now everybody knows neuroplasticity is real. So just, what is reality, and what do we, and where do we then put our faith? Yeah.
Right. And I know, because I know people in the science realm, right, which but are some of the most spiritual people that I've ever met, right? Because they, like you, they've gone through things, right, where they go, okay, well, science says this, right? But then, like you said, from some miracle or something where they can't explain it, they go, well, maybe there is something to this higher power thing, or
That's
this
right.
thing greater than we are. I mean, it's happening. And sometimes when people have that doubt, that I've run across, that are either agnostic or atheist, right? In my life, I said, well, and then we can get a whole other debates. But I tell them, look at my recovery. I go, there's a reason that I'm 22 years sober. Yes, I've done some work, but there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things that happen that can't be explained, and I shouldn't be sitting
Mm,
here talking to Dr. Amy,
yeah.
right? Because my human experience, I hate to say it, it may sound, kind of sick, but like when I was going through it, didn't want me to be here because I was
Mm,
trying to, you know what I mean? And then, but like you said, when I had trouble with the God concept and stuff like that, I'd look at people, I'm like nobody can be that happy and believe in something they can't hear, see, touch, or whatever. But like mentors of mine, like my sponsor, for instance, said, I want you to start doing a gratitude journal. It's going to help you
that's
change your brain. I mean, and he didn't know, but he had heard about neuroplasticity and how if
right.
we do certain things, it will change the neural pathways in our brain and actually help us, look at the world in a more positive light, ourselves and others.
Totally.
That's why I'm a big proponent of gratitude journals, even if you keep it simple, but like first thing in the morning, doing 3 things you're grateful for. And then at night, right before you go to sleep, you do
Mm,
3 new things, right? Because I've heard from
mhm.
doctors and scientists like yourself that if you do that over time, what happens is your brain changes and it
Yeah.
starts rerouting things in your brain, like I said, to look at things more in a more positive light.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've been doing this a long time, right? And
Yeah.
also, people that in the science realm, right? Like it's their way or no way. There's no
Mhm.
God.
Mhm.
There's no such thing as miracles. We'll explain it. But like you said, their data can be manipulated, right? We
Yeah.
see it. I think in the world we see it with politics, let's say,
Yeah.
right? They can definitely manipulate numbers for their side, and they can do it for their side and then show the world certain things. But okay, like you had this spiritual awakening, right? After an acupuncture. Tell the audience, like I know things don't happen overnight, but how in that process when you had that experience, like what happened to you where you went like there's more to science than just science?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so knowing, that I probably had come from my college campus and just, thinking about all of the nuts and bolts of the brain and biology, and gone over to that acupuncture session, what happened when he put the needles in is that I felt like I was levitating and I felt like I was sinking and I felt like I was hearing voices and I didn't feel like I was crazy and I felt like I could feel the energy tracking through my body. And what happened for me was it's very hard to describe. It's almost like the feeling of the moment that my son was born. Like, what does a God moment feel like? But it was this feeling of like, oh, we will never be able to explain all of this with science, and there is a God. And it was a massive, like, explosion kind of feeling, like a personal Big Bang explosion into a into a different paradigm. And so then I started studying indigenous rites of passage, and I started studying shamanism. I started studying the ancestral ways that we lived across the globe, especially in North and South America. But how did we all used to live, and what did we used to believe about healing, and what did we used to
Right.
believe about how the world really works, like the cosmos and the person, and how does that all fit together? And there's a lot of animism. There's a lot of like everything is alive. There's a lot of interconnectedness, and I started
Right.
to recognize that. And it was inside of the frame of understanding science really well, and like the academic scientific community is like the materialism that like we only believe what we can see and touch. If we can't measure it, it doesn't happen. It's not real. Like that's baked into our whole society. It's not just the science community, right?
Right. Right.
And then
Right.
separatism, like everything is individual and it's all happening and we're separate from the total. Like there's a lot of people that would still like to pretend that we are a separate consciousness from the all of the consciousness, even though NDEs, near death experiences, have been documented in the tens of thousands and happen all of the time, all over the world, through time, through culture, that have massive similarities. And those exist even when someone is clinically brain dead, even when someone has no meds in their system. So how do we explain that? How do we explain that they have full cognizance of what's happening in the room, maybe, or they're having these incredible experiences of meeting deceased loved ones? So I think that to some extent, I come then to the understanding of the mass effect. Sometimes we can be too intelligent um, to be able to really hear and to be able to really learn. So the mass effect would say that the top 10% of the most educated and maybe the most high IQ people in the world are absolutely the most susceptible to being brainwashed. And then there's the 10% of
That's
people in the world that are maybe equally as, intelligent. Maybe they are, or maybe they aren't as indoctrinated with academics. By the way, I say that as having a doctorate, so I'm not
right.
anti-academics. I'm just
Right.
saying, but like there's those people that see through it and that like can't unsee it. And then there's the
Right.
80% of people in the middle, and those are the people that I really, well, it's really everyone that I want to speak to, but I feel like that we basically need to claim our power back. If I had believed what doctors told me, I'd be living in a bubble. I'd be sick. I'd be on 10 different meds a day. I'd be
Right.
having all kinds of problems with my health still. I'd be inside of a sick care model because I didn't care to question or didn't feel like I had the right to question that reality. And, post Big Bang, I'm like, okay, all bets are off. And if it and now knowing that we don't know, how do I create a
Right.
different reality for myself? Right. So how do we hold that and also step forward in ways that are practical and grounded? Right. So as a healthcare
Right.
provider, I'm not going to just randomly give somebody something that might harm them or doesn't have basis, but I do have to really attune myself, and I listen very deeply on a soul level, honestly, to what it is that this client or patient is needing so that I can give them what is exactly the right thing. I would rather not just give them the most common thing, but in fact,
Right.
the thing that they most need. And always, always, to the point of your shoulder, make sure that I'm helping them with why it is that they're having this problem to begin with.
Right.
Right? Like,
Right.
your shoulder's not misbehaving, and it's not just because you did something weird at the gym when you were lifting and now it's a little tweaked. Why is it actually happening? And
Right.
when people in general can get down to the core of that, then they can have a spontaneous resolution or let's say, a 3x speed of healing over what they would have if they didn't bring that meaning in, right? And this
Right.
is real resilience because we're actually learning and we're working in conjunction with our body. And when we learn the wisdom that it's teaching us, when we learn the wisdom that life is teaching us, then we become very resilient. And but it requires to come to the topic of your podcast, courageousness. This requires a sense of being willing to stand firmly rooted inside of oneself
Right.
and live from there. Yeah.
Right. I love that, right? Because I mean, if you think about it, at least when I was in school and some of the research I did for my classes, right, in psychology and studying some of those indigenous people right around the world, right? And like even today, they find these tribes, right, that have never had the flu, you know what I mean? Cancers because of their beliefs and how they use the earth and, like you said, their spirituality, right? And then I don't know. For me, it's similar to my recovery. I always try to use that because sometimes you can't explain how someone goes from one thing into the other. And if
Yeah.
you saw a picture of my before, right, and then me now, well, you're seeing me now 22 years later, you'd have, like a lot of people go, I can't believe that's you, right?
Yeah.
But what happened, I think, is what you're alluding to and talking about is, right, something shifted in me where I said, okay, I got to open my mind to something different, right? Because I'm tired of, I hate to say it, the VA's very guilty of it, right? They just want to give you a pill in
Mhm.
and out, right? Here's ibuprofen or here's this or
Mhm.
and I argue with my doctors. No, not doing that. Right. Matter of fact, I got off my antidepressants 5 years ago because I felt it's not working anymore. So why even take it? So I think it's time to get healthy as I go into my 50s,
Yeah.
um, and so I'm trying to do more holistic, like natural homeopathic stuff for, mindfulness,
Mhm.
visualization, using my brain, right? And it's funny you mentioned the shoulder. I do got a bad shoulder, right? I had surgery and had no muscle return since 10 years ago. So, but I had an interesting conversation with a past client, right? Where you can do things that actually use your brain, maybe not heal it fully, but help get it more range of motion, maybe start activating the nerves that have gone dormant on you. And it's funny because you said that too. Another guest I had um, does helps people transform and heal through their voice, right? Vocal
Mm.
transformation. And she did a short thing with me while had her on the podcast. And like, I couldn't explain it, Dr. Amy, but I was seeing colors.
Yep.
It was it was weird, but it was really cool at the same time. Like
Yep.
I told my wife afterwards, I go, it was almost like I was having a trip, like back in the days when
Right.
I was doing acid. And I go, but it was all how she taught me how to do this with my voice. And that's why I love breath work so much. Cause sometimes I have those moments where I'm doing some breath work and I have this like slight out of body experience where I'm looking down on myself going,
Mm.
right. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, yeah.
keep doing this. Keep
Yep.
like stay on your path
That's
and keep interviewing the people. And it's well, to me, it's like God has blessed me with amazing guests like yourself that are sharing their stories and showing others that there's an other way than just going to your doctor and getting a prescription and then going home.
that's right.
Right. And
Yeah.
you and
No, I
I
love
think
that.
believe
And
the same.
yeah, I
I
hear
would,
and what I hear in your story is, even in the moments maybe where you felt like you were kind of experimenting with throwing your life away with reckless behavior, the addiction and things like that that were happening for you, there must have been some deeper part of you that communed with God. There must have been some other part. There's a reason, however you got, kind of through that particular window. But what I'm hearing since then is a deep engagement, like a deep will. And I talk about the power of the yes. Like, we have to be a yes for living. We have to be a yes for setting ourselves free. We have to be a yes for finding the way with that health thing, with that emotional thing, with that relationship thing, and really being open. I work with as an executive coach and strategic advisor, I work with some of the most powerful and brilliant leaders in the world, which is a beautiful thing. And often what I'll tell them, they'll say, well, how do I accomplish, having a better relationship or whatever it is? It's like, first and foremost, you got to be a yes, because there's a surrender that's involved in that. And there's then the
right.
opportunity to be able to be shown different paths by your highest self, by your subconscious, by the higher power, whatever you believe in. But if you're not a deep enough yes, you're going to live inside the exact same reality that you've been cruising around in and suffering in, right? So it takes a lot of courage to show up and say, hey, even if I have to find a different way, I don't want to do that antidepressant in your case. I'm not telling anybody they should go off of theirs, but I'm just saying,
Right.
right? Like whatever it is that's right for folks, like we have to listen to that inside of ourselves. And that is
Right.
ours. And nobody takes that away from us. Not the government, not the normal things. Like everybody's kind of indoctrinated into a certain way of thinking. Um,
Exactly.
and we're not going to find miracles there, but we're also not going to, we're not going to get miracles to happen by just kind of like falling asleep at the wheel and hoping that something happens for us, right? So engaging with the
Exactly.
gratitude journal, that's a start for sure, but
Right.
like living through the potent feeling of like, there's a miracle that can happen in any moment. And what is that? Right. And how
Right.
am I being guided in every moment? And how do I listen to that right now? And you don't have to know the answers to things. You just have to fall really deep into the yes about wanting
Right.
those things.
And I agree with you, right? Because the people that fall into the yes, and I'm only using my experience because I've been doing it for so long, like people that say yes to getting sober, right? I've seen some of the most drastic changes in people
Yeah,
where, they even sometimes they go, how did I ever do that? Right. But
totally.
it's, it's our journey, right? I think that that's sometimes like you've probably seen it in your lifetime where people have gone through some of the worst experiences ever and come out on top because they realize like I had to say no to certain things, but the yes, like well, for me, what I've learned was I surrender to win. And the more I surrender to, for me, it's God and His will, and trying not to impart my will on people, right? My life is pretty happy and for the most part pretty healthy. Um, but that's what I do with my clients is I don't like in my private practice, I don't tell them if they bring up the 12 steps, then I encourage them and then I hold them accountable.
Hmm.
And the only reason so I can ask them, what did you learn at those meetings? What have you learned? Right? What are some of the differences you see? What are some of the similarities? And right, but it's their journey. But I help them work on mind, body, and spirit, right? And like you said, saying more yeses so that their mind opens more to the possibilities that, right? There's more to life out there than what they were doing, and
Yeah.
that if you continue, right, like for me, there's a part of my life, if you would have said you're going to be speaking to Dr. Amy Albright, I would have been like, I don't know what you took, but I don't think that's ever going to happen,
Right,
right?
right, right.
um
Yeah.
but I think you explained it, now I understand it, because I did open myself up to the yeses instead of the constant no, I'm not going to, like
Yeah.
like a little kid, no, not doing it, I don't want to eat my veggies, you know what
That's
I
right.
mean?
It's amazing though, the inner child that can be living inside of any adult, that even the ones that look quite professional and pulled together and successful and all of that, that is very, very afraid of change and very, very afraid of letting go of what
Mhm.
they think they know in order to fall into the what they do know, what the actual truth is, right? That
Right.
can feel like a very scary thing. But actually I can offer if you want to try something. I don't know if it'll be like the vocal lady, but I have a breath work that it's actually a 3-step process that I can bring you through if you want to try that. Um,
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So let me just give a little bit of context. I think that the biggest reason that we're inside of pain and fear and suffering is that we've forgotten that we're all interconnected. We're actually all interconnected. When a brain is
Mm-hmm.
working well, it's connected and it's communicating and everything is in synchrony. Actually, it goes beyond coherence. When a family is working well, they're having a feeling of working well together as a team. There's a loving kind of flow about things. Same thing with sports
Right.
teams, business
Hmm.
teams, anything that's out there. So and where humans really have thrived historically is understanding that we're actually on the same team as Mama Earth. We're not better than her, and we're not here to exploit from her, and we're
Right.
not here to take from anybody. Everybody, it doesn't matter what country you're from or what your story is, we're all on the same team. We're in this
Yeah.
together. So, in order though to really be able to shift into that, we first have to shift gears for our own body, and we have to come into a sense of self. right? Because it's we don't want to lose ourselves inside of what the team needs or what's going on out there. So the first thing that we want to do is become aware of our tailbone. So the tailbone's like we have the spine, we have a triangle shaped bone at the bottom called the sacrum, and then the
Mhm.
tailbone's about an inch long at the bottom. Nobody really talks about their tailbone unless it's broken because they fell off of a horse or they fell snowboarding or something, right? It's a
True,
part of our
right?
body we're
True.
not really thinking about.
Right.
But if you think
Right.
about it, we literally have like a small segment of a tail. And just like any mammal that has a tail, think about a dog. We know where a dog is at based on their tail. What
Right.
happens for us is we don't realize that our posture, or the way that we're standing, the way we're sitting, the way we're using our tailbone is impacted by our stress. So typically people will tuck their
Mm.
tailbone under because they're chronic sad, they're chronic worn down. They're just like, they're chronically not okay. Or they've had past trauma. One moment of trauma can do this. And then
Right.
what possible neurologically, emotionally, and even energetically, you can really feel a shift um, when we shift our tailbone. So first thing I want you to do is just bring awareness to the tailbone. Again, it's that little segment. And I want you to be able to allow it to drop back a little bit. Most people need to literally let it just drop back a little bit. And it might take a little bit of a tilt of the pelvis, or it might just be that that area is softening and relaxing a little bit. So that's the first thing we want to do. And what happens when we do this is we're signaling to our body that we are safe. If we put a fake smile on our lips, it actually changes our brain and tricks our brain into thinking we're happy. If we allow for our tailbone to drop back, it helps to trick our body into believing and knowing that we are safe in this moment right now, regardless of what happened, regardless of what might happen in the future. Okay, so then the next one, that's the I am. That's shifting into the me. The next step is to be able to shift into the we are, the remembrance of the interconnectedness. Now, as we sit here with our tailbones a little bit more drop back, we can imagine that they're an antenna even to receive beautiful signals of love or peace or energy from Mother Earth or whatever it is that works for you. It doesn't matter. But as we do that, the idea of being interconnected with all things does us almost no good. It's a thought. So, what I want to do next is engage a breath that has us experience the knowing that we are interconnected to all things. So I'll invite us to first, let's just be playful also. As you can tell, we got to be having fun. It's good to have fun
Right.
even doing big
Right.
things, right? So let's just be playful. I want you to imagine your entire skin as it envelops your body. And if you want to, Max, we can close our eyes. It'll help you to feel all of this better. So we've got the tailbone, relax back a little bit. And then we now are feeling and sensing our skin as it envelops our physical body. And what I want you to do is see, feel, or even just imagine that you can sense all of the trillions of pores of skin. And then in the next inhale, I want you to see, feel, or imagine, just pretend and play that you could inhale through your skin, through all of those pores as if they're tiny little nostrils. And you do it very gently, very easily. Good. And the exhale goes through the nose. Now, I know this might sound silly, and if you're feeling silly, just keep going. You're not going to hurt anybody by breathing right now with us. So we have this tailbone in a really soft and relaxed position. We're telling our body that we're safe. And we're drawing sweet, gentle inhales through the pores of our skin. And we might even be able to feel a sensation on the skin about that. And we allow for ourselves to just drop into that a little bit further. It's such a gentle breath. It's a non-efforting breath. Good. And often what starts to happen with people is they start to have some shifts. Maybe it's the body. Maybe it's the quality of the mind, the way that the thoughts are forming. And I'll invite us to bring that breath. And again, we're just allowing ourselves to see or feel or imagine this breath. But imagine that that breath is coming in from all areas of the body, the backside, the hands, the feet. Good. And we'll just do a few more breaths. Let's allow for the tailbone to just even adjust. You might want to drop back even more now, make a little more space as our body is getting more relaxed. Good. So step one is the tailbone, coming into safety of self, feeling yourself. Step two is the breath through the skin. And that's where we start to feel a sense of a presence of something, a connection to something. Maybe some people have described it that their skin starts to feel like it's no longer the edge anymore of them, like a blurry boundary, like more of an amoeba kind of edges. And then step three is that we very simply, and if you want to, we can reopen our eyes as we continue to breathe in this way. We just move through life, right? We allow for ourselves to stay inside of this space, and we engage in conversation. Maybe we have good emotion, maybe we have not good emotion. If you are inside of this breath with the tailbone can in its relaxed position, the breath through the skin, when you're in that state, what happens is alchemical. What happens is it's clarifying. What happens is the path becomes clear, or at least the emotions become lighter if they're uncomfortable. Um, and it brings a real resilience for folks. And if they practice this eyes open and eyes closed, kind of even just for a short period of time, it creates real change for people. It creates a real impact. So I'll stop there and just ask, did you experience anything different with that practice?
So that was like when you said, like imagining little nostrils all over my body. Like I could
Mhm.
feel like almost like little air coming out of my skin everywhere.
Yep. Yep. Super
Like
common.
my top of my arms especially and my feet.
Ooh, nice. I love it that you notice what parts are easier, right?
Yeah, I know
What
it's just
stronger.
yeah, I was see, I believe in that stuff, and I love what you say about being interconnected. Right? I think that's what the world has gotten away from. Right? Instead, we need to come back and connect with each other instead of being so separate.
That's
And
right.
and I learned that from I came across this TED talk from an English journalist from England. It's about what the title is, and my audience has heard me say this so much before, but I want to share it with you. It's what we know about addiction is all wrong, right? So he
Mhm.
goes into his talk. It's like 60 minutes long, and he talks about how
Mm,
Portugal, right, legalized drugs and instead of persecuting or hating on the addict, right? What he
that's right.
basically says is we got to learn how to love on the addict, right?
Totally.
As a parent whose children took after their dad, and I've had had to, from a parent's view, learn how to hold boundaries, but not hate on them, right? Like,
Mhm.
because he says at the end, he asks the audience, what do you think the opposite of addiction is? And you can hear the people in the crowd going, recovery, sobriety. And he's all, no, it's connection,
That's I was yeah, exactly.
you know? And
Yeah,
he
that's
said, if
it.
we can learn to love on them, right? Like love them back to health instead of
Mhm.
sticking them in a prison or,
Mm,
you know what I
yeah,
mean?
totally,
We could
totally.
change that. And he goes, I don't know if from what I took, I don't think he's a total proponent of like legalizing every drug, but he said Portugal at the time, Portugal was like the Netherlands
Yeah,
they're great examples because their crime rate is much lower than ours.
that's
Right.
right. Yeah.
And
Yeah, I love that, Max. That's powerful. I would say that, um I have a very clear sense when I'm sitting with people, when I'm working with people. I feel I'm very, very tapped in on a lot of levels. And I can tell you that the people who are in pain and suffering, they're disconnected from the feeling of being connected to everybody, like to all
right.
things, right? They're in their head, they're shut down. And there's often a lot of shame. And one of the things that I think is just like a huge epidemic is this disconnection that happens when we have a sense of shame. And I think addicts definitely struggle with that, right? They
Mhm.
know that they wish they weren't doing the thing. They know that they're lying to somebody. They know that they're failing in some way to show up for their responsibility. And instead of hating on themselves, being able to bring themselves into connection. And so I hope that this breath and that this conversation can really serve, whether it's somebody that's coming through an overt addiction, like to substance of some kind, like alcohol or
Right.
whatever, or an
Right.
addiction to social media, or an addiction to porn, or an
Right.
addiction to just numbing out in general, or overeating, or pretending they're okay when they're not okay, or whatever
Right.
it is that they're struggling with, right? Keeping care of everybody else. Like the classic mom syndrome is like taking care of everybody else and not knowing how to take care of themselves. Like these are all
Right.
various forms of addiction. There are various forms of checking out from what's actually going on.
Right.
Workaholism. These are heralded addictions. They still wreck
Yeah.
people. They're still
Yeah,
terrible,
absolutely.
and they're still driven by shame, even if the person's making all the money and getting all the accolades. In the meantime, their health, their family, their life is falling apart or has no meaning, right? But they're addicted to the external. So how to
Right.
heal up just about everything, I really think, how do we have conversations with each other where we're not triggered? Be safe.
Right.
That tailbone is like I can't even tell you how huge that is, right? And then when we can bring that breath in that gentle way, eyes open or eyes closed, it could be in the middle of a boardroom meeting or a fight with your wife. It could be anywhere in the world.
Right.
You can choose to breathe in that way, and then all of a sudden, that with the tailbone, your perspective changes, and there's a new opportunity available that was not available in the moment before. There's relief
Right.
found, and it's positive, right? We're breathing.
And
We're touching in with our bodies. We're thinking
right.
positive thoughts. We're likely to be in that
Absolutely.
gratitude. Like these are good things, and it's
Right.
foundational. Yeah.
Right. And I love that because, even someone pointed out in the Bible how God blew the breath of life into man. Right. So
Mhm.
breath goes back thousands and thousands of
Totally.
years, and how it can help us heal our minds and our bodies. And
That's
I
right.
like that you say that because I know you work with like very high level people. And it's interesting that some of this stuff gets brought up because I had another guest where he talks about men and women who are very successful, right? Like are millionaire, billion, really done well for themselves. And it's like, okay, they get to a certain point. It's called almost like the midlife crisis right now. They've completed their goal and their purpose. And now they look at themselves and go, what do I do now? Right. Like
Yeah,
they look back on their life and they said, I've worked so hard, but I'm disconnected from my wife or I'm disconnected from my kids because this was so much more important. Right. Yes, they're going to be comfortable for but what does that mean? And he said, like, some of them just look at themselves and go, now they start feeling that guilt and shame for picking their career
that's
over
right.
their family.
For
And
for
now they're
praying,
going to,
yeah. Yeah, for
yeah,
praying, I like to call that kind of thing like praying to the false god of money. Just like
right.
earlier, I was referencing the false god of science. Like these are not the things that people actually care about at the end of the day. When they're on their deathbed, I've helped people to make those transitions. And I can tell you that in the last days or weeks or moments of someone's life, they're not wishing um, that they had done anything other than connect and have real meaning making. They're wishing that they had hugged their kids more than worked more hours, for sure.
Right. And I think that's important for the audience to hear, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, and right, money helps pay our bills. We
Yeah,
have to
for
pay
sure,
our
for sure.
bills and a roof over our head and food in our bellies, but it doesn't have to be the main driving force that makes you successful, right? I know
Yeah,
I've heard of other people who are very successful where they have great family relationships because they keep that connection, right?
that's right.
And they do that thing where they hire the people to do all that stuff for them so that they can spend time with their families and be successful at home and with their friends and family.
Right.
um
It's living
you
really
know
according to values in that way, you know?
right,
It is really, and, people can actually, if it's done well, make multiple times more income in living in their values than by not, and that's
right,
what I love to see. That's powerful.
right. And I'm sure there's people in the audience like me and going, I need to work with Dr. Amy because I got to get some things right here because I'm going about it all wrong. And but I have come to a place, I'm 57 years old, where it's like, if success to me is if my family's healthy, right? They're happy. I can do some things with them, right? And knowing that they'll be okay whether I was here or not. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
I don't, yes, I want to be successful, but that doesn't always mean I want that big paycheck,
Great.
or, you know what I mean? I just want to see, like, I'm a grandfather now. So, like,
Congrats.
I,
That's
I
awesome.
get, I get overpaid when I, get hugs from my grandkids or my granddaughters, because two of them live downstairs. And, I have this one with my oldest granddaughter. She's 8. And she knows if she comes in the room and sees her Opa, which is, grandpa in Dutch or German, she cannot leave or go anywhere else until she gives me a hug. And then,
Mm,
so we have this agree. And see, to me, that's like successful. That to me is like, I'm not too busy to not notice them. And you know what
right.
I mean? Like I'm building that
Yeah.
connection and
That's
I'm
exactly
trying to,
right.
right. And I'm trying to
Yeah,
do
it's
that in all
connection.
areas of my life. Right. And like with you, I feel connected to you because we're having this awesome conversation of what I believe. You said it before I did, is like we lost our connections and we need to connect again. And
Yeah.
right. You help people do that, which I think is amazing. So I'm going to start asking you some of the questions that I love to ask, right? Which
Okay.
I can't remember that we joked about before, but
Okay,
I
right.
do remember these. I
Okay.
usually have my background here, but I always point at it, but I don't. But fearless, right? I'm going to start with fearless. So, Dr.
Okay.
Amy, what does fearless mean to you today? And how does that show up in your life on
Got
a
it.
daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think fearless is I would say there's 2 things. There's, like, the resonant level of resilience. How much do you, over time, change your relationship to things that you think you're afraid of? How much do you create resilience inside of your health, mentally, physically, emotionally, etcetera, right? How do you create that depth of prevention of fear? And then I would say that within fearless, that there's, like, a fearless attitude toward being with fear. Right? And that fearlessness might be, I'm going to be with this thing that hurts right now, and I'm going to take this breath with me. I'm going to take this breath. I'm going to breathe into the next moment. I'm going to breathe into the next moment. I'm going to stay with it. And wow, oh, it's lifting. Oh, all right. Right. And this is how we grow
Right.
that foundation of resilience over time. Because, like in medicine, we think about like an acute thing, like there's something that's up right now that's new. And then we talk about chronic, and those are the things that are there. So,
Right.
like to me, real fearlessness is being willing to look at all of those and to courageously live in a way that is present and connected, and choosing what it is that we value and choosing what it is we know to be true and living in that way, rather than falling into the lies, the illusions, the misperceptions, the trying to please other people, the going along to get alongs, all of that stuff. Like that is, to me, that is fearlessness, and it's fully being alive, which is I think one of the huge benefits. Freedom and being fully alive are the huge benefits of that way of living with fearlessness.
I love it, right? Because if you do something that you're afraid of and you get through it, I know you know that feeling. I've had that feeling where it's like, wow, I
Oh, yeah.
actually did it. Right.
Totally. I wanted to be a public speaker, and work on that more, and this is many years ago now. I've been public speaking for more than a decade, but, I thought, I wanna be able to handle bigger and bigger audiences, so what I did was I took a singing workshop, and every week I had to sing in front of my class, which was terrifying for me at the time. I was used to just singing
Wow.
in the shower,
Right.
by myself, and
Right.
then but the graduation for the class, and I knew this in advance, was get up on a stage in front of 300 people and sing and dance a solo with a full band behind you. All out, full song and dance. And
Wow.
and I figured, it won't kill me. It sounds like I might throw up thinking about doing it, to be honest, at the time. But if I wanna be able to say anything I want on stage, then I'm gonna get up and sing and dance, because if you can sing and dance in front of people, that is so vulnerable. I can surely say anything I want. So it's like, how do we go to the scariest thing
Right.
that we know won't kill us, that's actually good for us, right? It was good for me to go
Right.
through that exercise. But it was terrifying, but I did it
Oh,
anyways, right? Because
right.
I knew I had a message to get out. I knew I needed to be able to talk to people, and I knew I wasn't gonna do it from inside of the small footprint I had been living in at that moment. I had to bust it open. So, yeah,
Right. And that takes so much courage. I mean, and yeah, that's not all people are going to go want to go sing and dance in front of, right? But for you, that's what you found, right? Like for me, the first time I spoke in front of a big crowd at a meeting, right? Like I was asked to speak down by Encinitas, and I didn't know it was going to be an auditorium that was going to be, pretty full.
yeah,
And I remember I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And, I want to public speak, but I always tell myself, you can't do it because it's not an AA meeting, right? So I've got to stop that chatter in my brain.
totally.
Um, but I love it because, right, courage, I think, and you explained it, is doing those things despite the fear. and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
going for it, right?
yeah,
Because one of the things I know that I had to overcome was a lot of my fear, right? A lot of my anger that came out early on in my recovery was
yeah.
all based on fear, right? Like, I'm not going to get what I want. Oh, they're not going to like me. And, and my sponsor would just say, relax, right?
Yeah.
As one of the sayings in the media, like you'll see him in the media, like, take it easy, relax and take it easy. And he'd always have me
Mhm.
read it. What does that say? And I go, relax and take it easy. I get it. But, one of the things that I've learned as a recovering person, right, that guilt and shame are the two feelings or emotions that keep us sick, or,
Yeah.
that keep us, because they can be so overwhelming. Right. So that's why I bring this up, everybody, because I want you to hear what Dr. Amy said, right? Look at it as like, okay, I'm feeling this, but I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to get through it, because if I keep doing that, I'm going to learn how to overcome that guilt and shame, because you're not doing the same things that you've been doing, like it's
Totally.
like anything, right? It takes practice. We got to keep going, because I know that, I say that from experience. That was why I was out there for so long.
Right.
I
Yeah.
would see people with their kids and I would feel, oh, here it comes, guilt and shame for not being with my kids. But, the reward is I finally made the decision, right? I'm here with Dr. Amy. So now I get to ask you the next question, which is
Okay.
happiness. And I spell it with a Y, as you saw.
Mhm.
Knowing I put the Y in happiness, what does happiness mean to you today, Dr. Amy? And how does that
Mm.
show up in your life on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, happiness comes from real freedom. Happiness comes from the freedom of being able to sit in the present moment and not have anxiety. Happiness doesn't as much come from external things, as it does our capacity to feel a feeling inside of ourselves that's kind of not as dependent on the things at all. Like, one of the
Right.
things that makes me the most happy is sitting in my reading chair every morning, staring out my window out into the forest. It just makes me really
Love it.
happy, right? But if I wasn't comfortable sitting still inside of myself, I would not have that joy. I would
Right.
not even want to sit there. I'd wanna run around and be busy or do
Right.
something. So, happiness is, it is about coming, like you said, to the why. I think you put the why in there probably for that reason. Like, what's
Yeah.
the why that we're living for? Why are we here? Why do we care? What do we actually care about? And getting really
Right.
aligned to that and being able to live in alignment with that. That's the ticket to happiness. And again, the foundation of all of that is being connected to self, and then connected to the bigger picture, connected to the all that is, connected to God, whatever the words are that people want.
Right.
We have to be a part of something that matters in order to want to be here. If we aren't a part of something that matters, that's when people's life expectancy shortens by a lot. Right? That's a
Right.
huge whatever, whether it's taking their own life or whether we're talking about somebody that's 80 years old, are they gonna live to the next Christmas or not has everything to do with whether or not they're excited to be a part of their family and they believe they have a contribution, right? Like, they
True.
will
Right.
literally end up opting out because of a heart failure or something if there's
Right.
not enough reason to be here. So, getting lined up with that why, being able to be present, and that to me is true happiness and true freedom.
I love it. I love it. Right. I'm right there with you when it comes to that. So this has been such an amazing time. And yeah, I know I could sit here with you for hours and just keep asking you question after question, right? Picking your
Yeah.
brain and having this wonderful conversation. But if my audience wants to get a hold of you, or there's someone out there that wants to reach out, ask you questions, possibly
Yeah,
even work with you,
yeah,
um,
totally.
how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way to reach out to me is via one of the websites that I have, which is Holon Experience, HOLON experience.com. And they can fill out an application form for a program. I actually have a lot of programs that are at different price points. We try to come up with something for that's affordable for most everyone. So we do have programs that are available, and then also it helps, it'll get the person onto the mailing list to know about new programs and also just to receive free information. I really want to help everybody. I want to help as many people as I can. The healer heart that I have is just wired that way. The other great
Right.
way to contact me is my YouTube channel, which is Dr. Amy Albright. And I also wanted to mention that at the wholeonexperience.com website, there is a free recording download available of the breath that we did today, that 3-step process, tailbone breath and
Awesome.
beyond. So I really intend for that to be a tool. Send it, everybody share it with as many people as they want. Let's help everybody
Love it.
drop in, be safe, be in that loving place of connection with themselves and with the world around them. And together we are stronger. Yeah. Connected and
Absolutely.
real. Yeah.
I
It,
love it. And I hope you're paying attention, audience, right? Because it starts with us. If we can connect with ourselves again,
mhm.
it will be easier to connect with other people. And I always use the airplane analogy, right? With the oxygen.
That's
If I
right.
don't put the oxygen on first, I'm not going to be able to help anybody. So
That's right.
I love it. And I brought that up because I want my audience to really understand it's not selfish to take care of yourself and learn how to connect with yourself, because you'll end up doing better with your relationships because you'll learn how to connect with other people. So thank you for that,
Yeah,
Dr. Amy. That's so
absolutely.
awesome.
You're
Like I
welcome.
said, it's been a great time. I've had so much fun. I may even bring you back for more. I'd love to actually, and dive a little bit deeper in like how your practice, you work in your practice, so people have
Yeah.
another understanding. But you're not quite off the hook yet, though. Today, I get to ask you my favorite question that I ask of all my guests, and it goes like this. So, Dr. Amy, what is the one piece of advice you could give my audience to help them grow as human beings and become better people?
Yeah. Remember that we are so much more than meets the eye. Going back to that Big Bang moment where the worldview of what we think we are, the worldview of what we think is happening is actually so limited. And to be able to reach into the expanse of the true majesty of your being, just like you were saying, Max, you could never have imagined where you are today. If we
Right.
keep imagining out, we actually have no idea where we can be. We have no idea the kind of impact that we can have, right? And to be able to reframe that we are walking, living, breathing miracles, that we are connected, and that we have extreme value. I feel like that's the most important thing that everybody here can really remember and live into.
I love it. I love it. Well, like I said, Dr. Amy, this has been such a wonderful time. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
gracing me with
Max.
your presence and being here and talking with me. So you heard her, everybody. If Dr. Amy made you think, if Dr. Amy taught you something, if Dr. Amy made you smile, and my famous, if Dr. Amy made you go, I like that. Please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review so more people can find the podcast. And go over to my YouTube channel, please, and go subscribe so more people can find it and watch the great conversations that I get to have with my amazing guests like Dr. Amy. And again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happiness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happiness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnijst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happiness.